online banking, for example, let's take just old school technology. It's not really evolving, is it? There's nothing exciting happening with online banking.
And I guess it's similar to your journey where you had to wear many hats, and that's helped you in your current role as VP of Operations.
Absolutely. I feel like we're going to say that phrase a lot today, wearing many hats. But when you're hiring in a startup, you really want to hire someone, A, that can make the difference you need there and then, but B, that is also going to be able to grow into the person that they need to become.
How do you see enterprises handling tech adoption in general? Maybe there's a big difference between startups and established companies.
There was this misconception, I think, probably 10 or 15 years ago, that engineers were in locked rooms, sat in the dark. There was no real expectation for them to do anything but push code.
Hello, and welcome to Tech Effect, the podcast where we interview industry leaders and experts to share their insights on the topics and trends shaping the tech industry. My name is Josh from TestDevLab's marketing team, and today I'm joined by Chris Woods. Chris has over 16 years of experience in the delivery of global executive search and selection assignments for high-profile blue-chip clients, having worked for the likes of Santander, Vodafone, Saudi Aramco, Dell, Omio, and BeReal, so it's fair to say he knows his stuff. Chris is currently the VP of Operations for Prelude, a company that specialises in advancing SMS and OTP verification infrastructure, where he works streamlining processes across the board to help his team operate at peak efficiency. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Great. Happy to be here.
Okay, glad to have you. So, Chris, you've previously worked quite a lot in talent acquisition, and you've spoken about that at various events.
Sure.
So could you tell us a bit more about the importance of talent acquisition and finding the right people and how they can impact a business?
Sure. So I think for me, talent acquisition is all about improving the current skill set which you have within your organization to further grow where the needs are. I think it's not just a bums on seats game. It's much more about identifying where the business can improve and ensuring that you find the right talent to really drive that forward.
Yeah, so it's all always about, I guess, analyzing what you need in the company and maybe what's the right fit as well.
Correct. Yes. So when it comes to actually determining where the business need is, it's not always just 1+1. I think there may be a technical need in an engineering team, but in order to fulfill that, you need to ensure that there is the right. I always try to avoid the phrase culture match. I think it's culture addition, and I think it's something we focused a lot on at BeReal and we focus a lot on at Prelude now, which is how can this person improve the team from a cultural perspective and a technical perspective for where we need.
And since your journey in talent acquisition and working and getting those right people for those blue chip companies, you've moved to become VP of Operations at Prelude.
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit more about that transition and your journey from working in that tech talent to operations?
Sure. So I think it probably started just before BeReal. I worked for a business called Zenly, which was acquired by Snapchat, and that was a fast-growing tech startup, much like BeReal. And the role of talent acquisition in that business was much broader than identifying talent and hiring. You know, generally you would have to wear a couple of different hats. You would probably get involved with some of the operational running of the business, some of the HR side of things too. And I think once BeReal was sold to Voodoo just over a year ago, it became apparent that there was a need for someone that can wear many hats, that is people-centric and that can help boost the back-end running of an organization. I think I often joke about my role at Prelude being everything that product and engineering don't want to do as opposed to being anything else. But I think, you know, that startup environment, and it's not just within operations, it's within all teams, suits people that want to wear many hats, that want to get involved in many different topics and want to continually learn and thrive in an environment where you're not operating within a silo, but more operating almost continually in the grey.
So you had to wear many hats and that's helped you on your journey, but are there any specific, maybe transferable skills you noticed that came from the talent acquisition side to the operations side?
I think there's two. I think any kind of HR or talent role, you're always massively people-centric, right? So it's always about ensuring that you can connect with people, understand people, sometimes read people, and that's very transferable into a much broader operational scope. But I think the second topic here as well, which is important in any walk of life, is deliverability and reliability. I think, you know, when it comes to talent and hiring, it's about making sure that you're able to hit core deadlines, you're able to manage stakeholders, you're able to connect with the external market. And when it comes to operations, it's about making sure that you identify where the needs of the business are. You set clear goals with the teams and then ensure that those goals are managed and hit.
Okay, and I guess because you've worked in both a startup environment and for big companies, have you noticed there is a different methodology or a different approach when looking at talent in those two organizations?
I think so. I think that the first and primary one when it comes to talent, if you consider somewhere like a Vodafone or like Dell, the amount of inbound interest in your organization is always super high,
Huge.
right? So when you post a role, very often you will have a huge pull on the market immediately. And also when you're first approaching candidates or the first like discovery meeting you have, you will do an awful lot of selling of the business in a startup, whereas actually, most people know who Vodafone and Dell are. So I think when you work for a startup, you really have to understand, one, what the business does, two, what the business wants to achieve, and three, what the values of the company are that you're selling, so that you're able to really get that across to the candidates at the early stage of a process, and then continue to reinforce that as the process goes on.
So with these big established names, it's very easy for them to say, we need someone, and you can get 1 million applications. Whereas in a startup, it's not only you have to promote the business in a way and explain the values of the business and promote it, because that's not as established with, say, Dell, for example. So you have to do a bit more work on that end. And then I guess, does it also matter in these small teams, you have to make sure it's a really good fit because of the size of them? Correct.
And I think I'd probably go a little further than that as well. I think hiring within a startup, the role is always much broader, I believe, than it would be within an enterprise organization. So if we look at an engineering team within an enterprise team, an enterprise organization, you would generally have a relatively firm understanding of exactly what A to B means in that position. When you're hiring in a startup, you really want to hire someone, A, that can make the difference you need there and then, but B, that is also going to be able to grow into the person that they need to become when the business is growing. And then C, and this is sometimes something that's quite difficult in the market, is you're also looking for folks that don't mind stepping outside of what their normal job role is. So prime example would be for us within engineering at Prelude, most of the engineering we do will be on the back end. However, as we have customer dashboards, etc., we will sometimes need our engineers to touch some of the front end stuff. Some engineers don't want to do that. So it's about making sure that fit is someone that has the kind of like a growth mindset almost, and wants to grow with the business instead of coming and delivering into a team. Okay, and I guess it's similar to your journey where you had to wear many hats, and that's helped you in your current role as VP of Operations. Absolutely. I feel like we're going to say that phrase a lot today, wearing many hats. But it's super important when it comes to growing any startup organization to have folks that are willing to do that and willing to be uncomfortable as well, right? Because generally speaking, it's very straightforward to stay within your lane and something you're very successful at, or something you've got a lot of experience in. It takes a lot of sort of character to step outside of that and to learn new skills, and I think that's something that's super important when it comes to growing a startup. Very good. And I guess as a bit of an introspective question then, what kind of made you want to take that leap and switch to operations? I think there's two answers here. One is what the honest answer is, I've done talent for a long time, and talent can be quite a cul-de-sac, to be honest. That once you're established within talent, and if you're performing within talent, it can become very difficult to step outside of talent. I think the second thing as well is that I really have that. I'll foster that growth mindset. I think wanting to learn new skills, wanting to make a difference, I think is a big thing too. I think over the years of working with people, you start to really understand how to connect, how to read, how to foresee maybe certain ways that things could pan out. And I think moving into operations, it allowed me to see how I could turn or move the needle of the business much more than just in talent. Oh, that's good. And I guess to sort of summarize then, in terms of finding the right people, making sure the culture's out there, explaining it, and transferring your roles and having to wear many hats, regardless of whether you're in talent acquisition or in operations, what you really have to do is you're solving problems for these fast-growing businesses. Correct. So looking forward from that, in those 16 years you have worked between both talent and Prelude now, there's probably been quite a few changes in the tech industry. Yes. Do you think there's any that really stand out, either in terms of maybe the kind of skills businesses are looking for, or maybe the skills you're seeing that businesses need now from an operations perspective? I think, to be honest, the one major change that I've seen over the last 16 years is definitely the expectations on software engineers, or developers as they probably were called when I started in talent. So there was this misconception, I think, probably probably 10 or 15 years ago that engineers were in locked rooms, sat in the dark. There was no real expectation for them to do anything but push code. And now what we find certainly at Prelude is that a major part of an engineer with our team is that their ability to communicate with our customers, their ability to communicate internally, and not just push code. So actually, I'd say probably the larger change is that real importance on communication. I think we can probably leverage some of that as has come from the COVID situation, which we're all very familiar with, when you had dispersed teams that were not working, sat next to each other, or there was no coffee cooler conversations. The ability for everybody to need to communicate in a clear and concise fashion is a big change. And I think that's something that the best and most efficient organizations I've worked at are the ones that communicate in the clearest and easiest way.
So it's not just technical skills, there's also a big emphasis on soft skills and having those soft skills.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a misconception some companies have of an engineer has to be an engineer, and they have that old idea of it's a man in a dark room working on his computer, he needs to be able to talk. But are there any other misconceptions you might notice?
I guess the obvious one, or the obvious change in the marketplace, and I'm sure it's something we'll touch on later as well, is the influence of AI, certainly when it comes across technical hiring, etc. I think that there is a big change now from when you would hire somebody in a previous process. You would angle the process in a certain way that would test a certain set of skills, whereas now with the reliance that we find folks having on AI, we actually find ourselves at Prelude turning the way we interview so that we can almost anti-AI the interview process, because we want to see the real person, not the computed answer of what we're looking for.
Oh, that makes sense. So in terms of skills, there is, I guess, a bit of a shift. What is in hot demand right now in terms of skills then?
I mean, the two buzzwords that come to mind and automatically will be data science and machine learning, right? I think the machine learning, of course, touching quite heavily onto AI now, but anything that's able to automate engineering processes is something that's super, super important for teams at the moment. I think organizations want to try to be leaner, so they want to have less people, but more processes that can self-replicate. I think data science, I think organizations now are becoming super, super analytical about what they're looking to achieve and how they're going to achieve it. So as opposed to analytics just being the output now, what we're finding is organizations are actually analyzing every step of the process to see how they can become more efficient as opposed to just the output.
Okay, so with data science and machine learning quite hot, and you probably know this from your time, what do you think the next step, and what future skills do you think might be the next thing afterwards from this analytics stage onward? I
think looking at analytics versus AI, I think it will be folks that are able to model AI around analytics, basically. So analytics at the moment currently takes up an awful large amount of time. There can be a lot of data processing involved. I think the folks that will get ahead of the curve here are the people that are able to automate that process, basically. So automate analytics, have commands that run and that are able to self-replicate or self-adjust depending on where the business is up to. I think that will be the next step.
That makes a lot of sense. So looking at AI and trying to take a deeper dive into AI, a lot of companies, maybe they're looking for it, and you mentioned that in the recruiting process, and then with machine learning and data science becoming more and more popular, it seems everyone wants to use AI, but what does it mean to effectively use AI?
I think that's a very good question. I think market conception of AI at the moment is it fixes the problems, whereas the way that we try to utilize AI within Prelude is to go from being reactive to proactive, right? And I think that's a conscious decision. So using AI to ask what the best restaurant in Paris is, that's going to give you a 1+1 answer. But actually having AI as an automation tool and being able to improve your own processes and streamline your own processes, that would be the key utilization for me.
So you use Prelude as an example, but is there maybe a broader thing you see across the whole industry as to how AI is being implemented? You've got those 1+1 answers and people want to dive deeper into how they use it. But from a sort of rule of thumb, what is a good way of a business saying we are using AI effectively?
I think it's integrating AI into your day-to-day. So making AI not a decision maker, but an indicative tool, I think is super, super useful. So if we look at companies, for example, like Resolve AI based out in the Bay Area, Resolve AI is basically offering AI platform engineering solutions. Now, an organization should never plug this in my humble opinion, and utilize it as the sole purpose. But I actually believe that utilizing that alongside your engineers and helping it upskill and make your engineers more efficient would be the standard way of utilizing it.
Okay, and I guess looking again, I'm touching on your history because you have so much of it. You worked for major companies like Santander and Vodafone. How do you see enterprises handling tech adoption in general? Maybe there's a big difference between startups and established companies.
Again, I think it's a difficult one because if you look at the banking sector, for example, the banking sector seems to be quite advanced in certain areas of technology when it comes to authentication, verification, which is great for Prelude. But if we actually look at online banking, for example, let's take just old school technology. It's not really evolving, is it? There's nothing exciting happening with online banking, and I think it's much the same with the conglomerates. I believe that there is a definite split in the market at the moment where you have the enterprise, almost OG businesses that are still leveraging their legacy-based technology, and then you have the startup world where it seems to be becoming about who can utilize or who can work the edge cases the best with the most advanced technology will get ahead of the curve. So I think there's definitely a split in the market there for sure.
That's good. And so you currently work for Prelude, and Prelude works in the cybersecurity realm, specifically on OTP and SMS verification infrastructure. Can you tell me a bit more about the importance of OTP and SMS verification and why businesses should really consider that as an important part of their general cybersecurity and how they manage their product?
Sure. So Prelude is a verification and authentication organization. We partner with B2B and B2B2C organizations, and effectively our vision is to create a suite of authentication and verification tools for our customers to utilize. OTP is just one of those tools. Now, we often say OTP is what keeps the lights on at Prelude. It's something we do very well. It's our flagship product, but we're now working on a number of other ways to verify verify users for our customers. For example, we've recently released a session management tool, which basically tracks live customer data and allows our customers to verify their users in real time. The importance of OTP for our customers is there for all to see. I think if we were to take buy now, pay later organizations that rely on authentication so that they can justify that a user is genuine, without that, the simple sales process wouldn't exist in the way it does right now. I think the biggest challenge facing the OTP or OTP and verification sectors at the moment are the anti-fraud related issues that we see in the news on a daily basis, it seems. And one thing we're working on at Prelude at the moment very hard is our own AIT solution, which effectively is not just combating the day-to-day fraud that you would see, but also the advanced types of fraud like SMS pumping, synthetic account creation, etc. Without that, it leaves our customers super, super exposed.
And are there any, because I think you mentioned buy now, pay later, are there any industries where SMS and OTP verification is super hot and really important?
I think the main one would be, or one of the main ones would be B2C social, right? So if we look at, for example, BeReal, a previous company of mine, verifying who a user is, particularly when it comes to social media where you're going to be engaging with other users, you're going to have to give personal information. This is super, super important for the social media businesses that we work with. I also think from a privacy and trust perspective, it's very, very important to ensure that your users are who they are, so who they are pertaining to be when they're communicating on a global basis with other folks. I think that's primary example number one, but the others that we touched on as well. So if we look at online banking, for example, it's very important to be able to justify or verify who a customer is if they are wanting to change their password, for example, because anything that gives access to their personal data, we need to ensure is locked down in the most secure way possible.
And there's some obvious edge cases here you've mentioned specifically with BeReal or with these social apps, but are there maybe some industries or some businesses or business models you think that haven't considered the importance of it and maybe could benefit from considering it or integrating it as part of their overall security package, both for their customers' data and themselves?
I think there's, to be honest, it's a good question. I think there's many industries that could definitely benefit from some form of verification. If I was to look, for example, when it comes to travel tech, without naming any organizations, there is many websites in which you can go online, you can book a holiday, you can pay vast amounts of cash to book these holidays, but there's no verification process in this, right? And I think that for me would be the next most obvious use case. So we need to try to expand the uptake of verification. It may not be SMS, it may be via session management, it might be via something called silent authentication, where there is much less press on the user to be verified, but it's much more about their information. But yes, I think anywhere where we have a user or a customer, as it would be, that is going to be spending money or that their personal data is going to be put out there, it should be something that should consider it.
And you've mentioned a few technical terms there. So for the sake of the audience, I was wondering maybe you could explain a few examples of ways they can verify the data. Because obviously SMS is self-explanatory, but are there any other methods that you would like to maybe highlight or explain for the audience?
Yes, I think firstly, when it comes to SMS OTP, there's always this constant rumor in the market that SMS is going to fall into the background, and it's analog technology. It's never going to stay around. But actually, we actually continue to see a really, really high percentage of our businesses want to utilize SMS as a medium. When it comes to OTP, though, it's not just SMS now. It may be something that you would find a bit strange, but in certain parts of the world, for example, Brazil, all of the verifications are delivered via WhatsApp. Now, certainly for me, if I was to receive a verification code via WhatsApp, I would probably think, it's a little bit strange. We don't have that. Don't have that in France or in the UK. But all of the mediums now that can be considered for this. So you have WhatsApp, you have Viber, which is also utilized in certain parts of the world. Telegram has also now released its own product to allow folks to do that, which is quite an interesting one where you have an unregulated medium that's utilizing verification. Yes, it's a little bit of an oxymoron on that one. But I think outside of that, there are many other ways to authenticate your users. So we just touched on silent authentication. So silent authentication can be a number of different forms, but if we take one, for example, number verify, it would be called. What we have here, we're testing this at the moment with the carriers in France, so Bouygues, SFR, Orange, is effectively we connect with the carrier, and when we get a request for a pull of information, it's very simple. The carrier either says yes or no to this number being a registered telephone number with them. So we utilize that as a heuristic or as an orange flag, an indicative source as to whether that is actually a genuine authentication or whether it's not. So so if we had a French number and we pinged all of the French networks, if the answer came back as no to all of the networks, we would automatically know that number is probably a synthetically created number. Outside of this as well, you have soft KYC, which is where we can match our customers based on data that is available in the public domain. So obviously very conscious that we don't want to fly too close to the GDPR challenges here, but there is some data that is publicly available. So we will leverage multiple different heuristics to understand whether that's actually the customer that's trying to verify or not. These specific cases, to be honest, are mostly associated with SMS pumping and synthetic account creation. But as we move towards sort of slightly more advanced terms of technology, we're now in the authentication space finding that the biggest challenge we have is this synthetic account creation where an account is able to be created and can authenticate. So generally speaking, with an OTP code, if the account is pushing for OTP requests, it can never put the code in. Whereas now there is technology that allows this AI model effectively to pretend it's a real user. So that will be the next big challenge for us, will be how we actually manage to adopt our own AIT offering to pick up synthetic accounts.
And with this, it does sound quite complicated, but is it particularly complicated to integrate this method of security?
So the Prelude product is incredibly straightforward to integrate. So it's all done via an API. What we also have for signaling for our customers is SDKs, be that on the mobile side or on the web side, so that we're able to actually pull information from our customers to actually feed the machine learning model that we have so that our own AIT offering continues to adapt. But yes, integration for this tool is super, super straightforward.
Oh, nice. Good to know. So it's easy, and it does add a level of security, and it can be non-invasive, like that first method you mentioned, where you just ping an operator to see if the number's real.
Yeah.
And then there's more, or maybe the user has to input a bit for more information.
Correct.
And either way, there's levels of it that can be non-invasive. It can be quite stringent, and you can work with it and you can implement it as you need.
Exactly right.
Oh, wonderful. My next question then is, working at Prelude and the team you have there, is there anything that gives you guys an advantage maybe in the markets you're working in, or maybe with the teams you've done? Because you've worked a lot in talent acquisition, so you definitely know how to recruit those teams and how to put them in the right place. So is there anything there you think that is really giving them an advantage?
I think there's a couple of points there. The first is, probably the major advantage for Prelude compared to the rest of the market is the actual product offering that we have. So we work in quite a unique way, which is we effectively aggregate multiple providers for different ways of authenticating. So if we take OTP, we have multiple providers that plug into the Prelude product. When we work with an organization, effectively we allow them to access the best pricing and the best conversion rates for their authentications around the globe. What's quite unique about Prelude, though, is that there's a lot of providers that are non-carrier based that that will add margin, etc., to the messaging that they're purchasing in order to run their business model. For us, we buy and sell at the same price. So it means that we can guarantee our customers the best pricing we have accessibility to with no deception on what they're going to pay. For Prelude, we have a license model that comes with that though, right? So as opposed to paying more on the authentication, our customers will pay to utilize the product, but it's based on their own consumption. So that puts us in a really strong place, because if you're a growing business and you want to be authenticating your users, you want to be getting the best price and the best conversion rate for that. So having that in one place effectively gives you access to 20, 30, 40 different providers instead of the one that you would tie in with. I think that's probably the biggest advantage we have.
Okay, and then on a personal note for the audience, looking back at your 16 years in tech, is there one piece of advice you wish you'd received earlier in your career? It's a big one.
It's a big question. Sleep more? No, I think the one piece of advice that I got that I probably needed to take on board a little bit more when I was younger was you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So I think it's when you're young and trying to impress and trying to grow in an organization, it's quite easy sometimes to talk more than you listen. And I think the 2 ears and 1 mouth is a good proportionate reference here, which is listen twice as much as you talk and then take action on that.
That's a nice one. So I asked that because we are starting to come to the end of our time.
Okay.
But I did want to ask from you, how can our listeners learn more about you, follow your journey, the work you're doing, and maybe the work Prelude is doing as well?
Sure. So I think for Prelude, it would be very straightforward. The users can just connect via prelude.so. Also, alongside that, you can find me on LinkedIn at Chris Woods 2, and you can connect with me on Twitter at the same handle.
Wonderful. So thank you, Chris. I'd like to close off this episode and thank you for sharing your insights with us today. It's been great to learn about your tech journey, the trends you've seen in your 16 years of experience working in tech talent, and where the industry is going and how you've grown into your role as VP of Operations, and a bit more about SMS and OTP verification. It's been really valuable. As mentioned, if you'd like to know more about Chris and his journey, as he goes on solving problems for fast-growing companies like Prelude, you can follow him on LinkedIn and on Twitter. And if you want to know more about making top-notch quality products, you can check out the TestDevLab knowledge base, where we have our blog, white papers, and of course, more episodes of Tech Effect. So Chris, thank you once again for being with us today. And thank you to the audience for joining us. It's been a great conversation, and I'll see you all in the next episode.